8 hours ago, the Pain Explainer uploaded a new video comparison of the most painful deaths. I don't know if I've watched any videos like these. I have seen them around, and I hope it's nothing too bad, so let's go. Actually, it's most painful death. Oh my gosh, we're starting. Okay, bro, this is horrible. Rest in peace.
An African-American boy from Chicago went to Mississippi during the summer of 1955 to visit his great-uncle, Moses Wright. Keep in mind that the South at the time was under strict Jim Crow laws, enforcing racial segregation and extreme discrimination against black people. On August 24th, 1955, Till and a group of other black teenagers went to Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market, a small store owned by a white couple, Roy and Carolyn Bryant. Carolyn Bryant later accused Till of whistling at her, making lewd comments and possibly touching her hand. Although decades later, she admitted that parts of her testimony were false. On the night of August 28th, her husband, Roy Bryant, and his half-brother, J.W. Milam, armed and enraged, forced their way into Moses Wright's home and Emmett Till at gunpoint. They dragged him out of bed while his terrified relatives watched helplessly. They first took him to a barn where they severely beat him. They out one of his eyes, his jaw, and out some of his teeth. They pistol him so brutally that his face was unrecognizable. Witnesses said they heard the beating and crying from the barn. They then made him carry a 75-pound cotton gin can, tied it to his neck with barbed wire, and shot him in the head with a .45 caliber Colt pistol. When his body was—
That is pure evil inside of their hearts. I know they are, bro. If they're not already in hell, they're going to be rotting in hell very soon, bro.
Eventually found, it sparked public outrage, making it one of the most important cases for the civil rights movement. So much so that Rosa Parks cited his murder as part of the reason she refused to give up her bus seat. Despite overwhelming evidence, the jury acquitted Bryant and Milam of murder in just over an hour. Some jurors even claimed they would have reached a verdict sooner if they hadn't taken a break for soda. Sylvia Likens.
Horrible, bro.
Likens was a girl from Indiana who was involved in one of the most brutal cases in U.S. history. Due to their parents' unstable work situation, Sylvia and Jenny, her sister, were frequently left in the care of relatives or friends. In July 1965, their father, struggling financially, arranged for Sylvia and Jenny to board with Gertrude Banisevsky, a mother of 7, for $20 a week. Gertrude, who was poor and overwhelmed with her own children, soon began taking out her frustrations on Sylvia. After the Likens' father fell behind on payments, Gertrude began her. Furthermore, not only did she accuse Sylvia of being promiscuous and spread false rumors that she was pregnant, but she also invited her own children and their friends to talk to her. After a while, though, things started getting even more serious. Gertrude started giving her severe beatings with paddles and belts, not giving her enough food, telling her to drink and eat her own.
Not even just the physical, torture she's being put through, but the mental torture, bro.
Extinguishing on her body, performed degrading acts, and eventually she heated a sewing needle and forced one of the boys to carve these words into Sylvia's stomach.
Bro, there is a special place in hell for you, bro. A rotting, flaming seat of thorns, buddy. How big of a piece of shit do you have to be?
She tried to escape multiple times, but was too weak to do so successfully. Eventually, after being beaten for trying to escape once more, she died on October 26, 1965 of brain swelling, internal bleeding, and shock. Junko Furuta. This is likely one of the worst cases of juvenile crime in history, known as the concrete-encased high school girl murder case, as the victim's body was discovered inside a concrete-filled drum. However, this is the least disturbing part of the whole event. On the evening of November 25th, 1988, Junko Furuta was on her way home from her part-time job when she encountered Hiroshi Miyano and Shinji Minato, 2 teenage boys looking for girls to rob and do what can't be said on YouTube. Their plan was for Minato to knock her off her bicycle, allowing Miyano to step in, pretend to be her savior, and offer to walk her home. All of this was intended to gain her trust. However, after luring her to a nearby warehouse, Miyano revealed his true intentions, threatening Junko by claiming he was a member of the Yakuza and would spare her only if she obeyed his commands. After doing something inappropriate to her, he called his friend Ogura, who insisted that she should not be released, as he wanted to do the same. The next day, Junko was taken to a park where Miyano, Minato, Ogura, and another accomplice, Watanabe, were waiting to do what Miyano did the previous day.
This is literally some of the sickest shit, bro. You are...
They told her they knew where she lived and warned that the Yakuza would kill her family if she attempted to escape. The group decided to confine her in Minato's house, where she would be held captive for 40 days. When her parents reported her missing, the captors forced Junko to call her mother 3 times, claiming she had run away but was safe and staying with friends. This was a manipulation meant to discourage further police investigation. While she was being held, Minato's parents were present in the house, so Junko was forced to pretend to be his girlfriend. However, when his parents realized what was happening, they still did nothing, later stating that they were afraid of their son, who had become increasingly violent toward them. When the group of guys realized Minato's parents wouldn't be a problem, they just dropped the act. The worst began on November 28th, when their violence escalated. They used fire where it shouldn't be used, made her stand without anything on the balcony at night in freezing temperatures, and they also inserted objects, including a bottle and a metal rod, where they shouldn't have been. She also inhaled paint thinner fumes. At one point, Miyano became enraged after claiming to have stepped in a puddle of her yellow liquid and decided to use fire as punishment. Throughout December...
Electric chair, bro. That's not even bad enough, bro. They need worse than that. They need the absolute... How do you even give them a proper punishment for this, bro?
The situation worsened, leaving Junko completely unrecognizable by the end of the month. Her injuries made her unable to walk to the toilet. Her face was incredibly swollen, and her wounds began to emit a foul odor. On January 4th, 1989, after losing money in a game of mahjong, Miyano became incredibly enraged. The following events are too graphic to detail fully, but they involved hot wax from candles, eyelids, and being forced to drink yellow liquid. At the end, the attackers wrapped their hands in plastic to avoid getting dirty, then started punching with their fists and an iron exercise ball. They then used...
How fucked up does your brain have to be, literally?
Fire one last time. After approximately 2 hours of agony, Junko succumbed to her injuries. The body was placed into a travel bag, placed it inside a metal drum, and filled it with wet concrete before dumping it near a construction site.
Rest in peace,
Münster
That's
Rebellion
no way to
leaders.
go.
In 1534, a group of radical Christians known as the Anabaptists attempted to seize control of Münster, a German city, in what became known as the Münster Rebellion. When the rebellion was crushed, its leaders were subjected to one of the most brutal executions in history. The three men were shackled together to a single pole, each locked in iron-spiked collars to ensure they could hear the other's screams and fully grasp the horror of what awaited them. One by one, red-hot prongs were used to slowly tear their flesh, beginning with the armpits, chest, abdomen, and legs. They started with Jan, and as Bernhard realized the agony that awaited him, he tried to make himself go to the other world with the collar. However, the executioners stopped him, ensuring he remained alive for his turn. Since they had been sentenced to a full hour of torment, the executioners paused the count each time they passed out, waiting for them to regain consciousness before resuming. After all of their flesh had been the executioners seized their tongues with hot clamps and cut them out. Only after the full hour of excruciating torment was complete did they finally put the men out of their misery by thrusting a dagger into their hearts. Their remains were then placed in iron cages that were hung from St. Lambert's Church as a warning. Though their bones were removed 50 years later, the cages still remain to this day. Balthazar Gerard.
That is like literally the worst possible way to go out, bro. All of your flesh ripped off, your tongue cut. What, bro?
Assassinating William the Silent, the leader of the Dutch revolt against Spain, Balthazar Gerard, was sentenced to one of the most brutal executions in history. The judges decided that in the end, his right hand would be with a red-hot iron. His flesh would be with pincers in 6 places. He would be and while still alive. His heart would be and thrown in his face. And finally, he would be But before all that, he went through days of torment that, in my opinion, were even worse. On the first night of his imprisonment, he was hung on a pole and with a whip. Then his wounds were smeared with honey, and a goat was brought to lick the honey off his skin with its rough tongue.
Bro.
After a day of various stuff like that, he was then left to pass the night with his hands and feet bound together, like a ball, making sleeping incredibly difficult. During the following 3 days, he was repeatedly mocked and hung on a pole with his hands tied behind his back. Then, a weight of 300 metric pounds was attached to each of his big toes for half an hour. But that was just the start, because Gerard was then fitted with shoes made of well-oiled, uncured dog skin. The shoes were 2 fingers shorter than his feet. He was put before a fire, so when the shoes warmed up, they contracted, putting the feet inside them to stumps. When the shoes were removed, his half-broiled skin was after his
my god, bro, how did they even think of this shit back then?
Feet were damaged. His armpits were with a red-hot iron. He was then dressed in a shirt soaked in alcohol, and burning bacon fat was poured over him. Lastly, sharp nails were stuck between the flesh and the nails of his hands and feet. It was only 4 days after the assassination that Gerard was executed in the market square of Delft. His arms and legs were then displayed on 4 gates of the city. Hisashi Uchi.
Jesus.
In 1999, Hisashi Uchi was working at the JCO facility in Tokaimura, Japan, preparing uranium fuel for nuclear reactors. In a rush to meet an overdue order, safety protocols were ignored. On September 30th, while pouring a uranium solution, Uchi saw a bright blue flash, a nuclear criticality accident. This meant that in that moment, he was exposed to an enormous dose of radiation, far beyond lethal levels. Uchi knew something bad was awaiting him, but he didn't know how incredibly bad it would have gotten. At first, his symptoms seemed mild: redness on his face, bloodshot eyes, nausea, and a sunburn-like mark on his arm. But his condition quickly deteriorated. His immune system collapsed, with tests showing catastrophic chromosome damage. His DNA was basically completely wiped out.
Radiation is insane, bro. The effects it could possibly have. What do you mean it took away his DNA?
Skin began in sheets. Any touch or the removal of medical tape away large sections of flesh. His body could no longer heal itself, making even small wounds a deadly risk. Doctors wrapped him in layers of gauze, which became a substitute skin that needed to be changed daily in a sweltering, sterile hospital room. The gauze changes were agonizing, as removing them off more skin and muscle tissue. Fluids were constantly leaking, losing liters each day. Muscles basically dissolved, releasing toxic levels of myoglobin into his bloodstream, threatening his kidneys, and necessitating continuous dialysis, which is a process in which blood is taken out of the body, purified through a machine because the kidneys can no longer do so themselves, and then returned into the body. Day after day, his organs failed one by one, requiring skin grafts, repeated blood transfusions, breathing machines, and more. After 59 days, his heart stopped multiple times in a single morning, but doctors revived him each time. He remained alive until after 83 days of unimaginable agony. His body completely shut down. His autopsy revealed horrifying details that we can't even think of explaining here on YouTube. For example, his intestines basically like a balloon. There are many controversies on why he was kept alive, and if that was the right decision, but we won't delve into that in this video. If you liked this video...
That was an interesting video. I would not wish any of these upon my worst enemy. Good God almighty, bro. This was a very accurate title. The Pain Explainer never misses. I might have some trouble sleeping tonight. I don't know. Get up in my hometown, there's nobody left. Set up the bro with a play, don't fumble it. Damn, he fumbled the ball, I gotta recover it. East Street lacking, other bitch caught up. He spun back, that's not what I taught him. Now I gotta make the play.